June 27th meeting of the Beaufort County Northern Regional Plan Implementation Committee meeting to order. And I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if everybody wants to join. Flag. Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Appreciate it. FOIA notifications are all gone out, and like to why don't we start off with going around the table and the audience and give us your names and who you're representing. Yeah.
Ed Pappas, Beaufort County Planning Commission.
Alice Howard, Beaufort County District 4.
And Dick Geyer, Beaufort County School Board.
Mike McPhee, City of Beaufort.
Scott Marshall, City of Beaufort City Manager, but I'm the proxy for Mayor Farmer this morning.
For Plain Nicola, Town of Port Royal Assistant Town Manager here for
Joe Clever, Beaufort County Council District 3.
David Bartholomew, Beaufort County Council District 2.
Rachel Hatcher, Senior Principal Planner, RSNH Consultant for the Northern Beaufort County Transit Master.
Brian Sullivan, Executive Director of the Low Country Regional Transportation Authority.
Stephanie Rossi, Low Country.
I'm Michelle Strader. I'm with Beaufort County Planning.
Cindy Anderson, Beaufort County Planning.
Nick Navia, City of Beaufort Planning.
Christopher Clement, Planner 3 with the City of Beaufort.
Hey, I'm Joseph. I'm a planner along with the Town of Port Royal.
Jesse White, Coastal Conservation League.
And Carol Crutchfield, Beaufort County School District.
And I'm Mike Tomey with City of Beaufort. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's Mitch Mitchell. I'm online. City of Beaufort.
Sorry about that, Mitch.
No problems. No problems. Thank you.
I didn't see you when you stood up. Like to go ahead and ask for the approval or comments on the minutes from the May 23rd.
We've accepted minutes as written.
Approval and second, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
Right. Okay, it's being specific this morning.
I'm the city on
Yes, thank you. It's unanimous. That's approved. Do we have any citizen comments this morning? Any comments online? Seeing none. I would say that I've gotten some letters asking for a few things during citizens' comments, but I think we'll save those and take a look at those on future agenda items and maybe some discussion there if everybody's okay with that. So we'll move on to new business, and Rachel Hatcher, I would love to hear what you have to say about the Beaufort Transit Master Plan.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for having me this morning. It's been a pleasure working with the community and with your very qualified and amazing staff to move through identification of transit needs and solutions north of the Broad. So I'm providing an update for you all today. Make sure we get, I'd like to be providing it. See if it hurts. There we go. All right, so today I'm going to provide you all with a study overview. For those of you who have not heard about the study yet, I'm going to provide some information about what our mission was, what our goals and objectives are for the study, and how we've accomplished those thus far with phase 1 key findings. And if you grabbed a fact sheet on the way in the room, that's a really great summary of the phase 1 findings that are helping us to move through phase 2. It also helped us to identify needs and strategies to identify and recommend specific implementation strategies for the community that could help to meet those needs most effectively and efficiently. That would then lead to system recommendations. There was a systems recommendation exercise we'll show you some pictures of. Mike, Tommy, and a number of other committee members were available to help us actually route systems and identify pros and cons for the community. And then, of course, next steps and discussion. So I know this won't be new information to you all because your mission here is to help implement improvements for this area of the region. But as part of the U.S. Census Bureau count, this area was identified as an area of major growth, not only since the previous census count, but also looking to the future that growth was going to continue. So your urbanized area expanded. And in the transit world, that distinction of urban versus rural is actually a line on the map. So once you become an urban territory, it opens up your opportunities for new funding types, new transit resources, and it actually dictates what type of transit you can provide. So it's very important once you become a designated urbanized area that you, as a good steward of those new resources, work with the Federal Transit Administration and DOT to plan for those resources. What we like to say is you got too big not to plan. So the Transit Master Plan works to define your transit goals because each community is going to have different community goals. Transit is a tool. It's a tool that helps you to solve whatever those missions, objectives, and goals are. To create a community profile so that we can best understand what those needs are. Someone who has limited access to a vehicle by choice is going to have very different needs and perspectives compared to someone who does not have access or reliable access to a vehicle. So understanding the community, the various profiles that you have, and then helping to strategize and understand the priority of each of those service groups. That helps us to lead to transit service recommendations. Those in some cases are together and sometimes a la carte, and you'll see that in our recommendations. And all of that comes with a financial analysis as well as implementation strategies to help you understand how to best leverage those resources that you as an urban area are going to receive. But there is always a requirement and an expectation of local match. So being the best possible stewards of your local tax dollars to make sure you can get as much benefit for the community as possible. So breaking it down to what we need, why we need it, and how we're going to provide that. I love a good graphic. So you can see we are here in our measures of effectiveness. We've gone through your existing conditions, including reviewing all of your previous applicable plans that your community set forth. It helps us to identify what your objectives are as a broader community. Public and stakeholder engagement help reinforce that. So going out extensively to the public and our really fantastic stakeholder committee coming together and saying, yes, what you read in that plan is accurate and still applicable to this exercise. And then asking specific questions from the public. If this were provided, would you write it? What are your actual needs? What do you want us to provide for you? Because at the end of the day, this is a rider-driven exercise. Service needs and alternatives and reliability. So if you provide service every 120 minutes and you have ice cream in a bag, that's probably not a really great solution for this part of the country. So that reliability and alternatives piece to best understand how we can provide some service, but that it's good and reliable enough service for folks to use it. So that's where measures of effectiveness come into place. And that's where we are currently, where we have done the alternatives work. We've gone back out to the stakeholders. We've talked to some of the public, and that is ongoing. And we're measuring which of the scenarios are going to be most cost beneficial and effective so that we can bring forth a preferred alternative. So you can see we're in the last part. I know we're covered up a little bit here in the final quadrant, but that's to come. You're in the last quarter of the study, essentially. So you can see we began back in September, and we've covered a lot of ground in what we call phase one, which are those next two blocks. And that moves us into phase two, where again, we're looking at those strategies and scenarios, but then finding that preferred alternative and moving into that detailed financial analysis. So the public and stakeholder involvement that we're getting from various groups, including yours, will help us to refine that scenario building to that preferred alternative. So we had a lot of public engagement. We are in engagement round 2, where we're reviewing and refining alternatives and prioritizing those mobility investments. And that's a really important moment to pause, because Fixed route transit, when people think transit, that's what they think. The stop on the side of the road that's going to come at a regular schedule. That's a very helpful tool when you're looking at the most urbanized areas where you're going to have the concentration for a pickup and the concentration for a drop off that meets specific industry standards. But that is not the most appropriate tool for every area in your community. So finding the right mobility investments. So in some areas that might look like a micro transit service. Has anybody in the room heard the term micro transit? Yes. Has anybody not? Okay, micro transit. We're going to do a really quick dive on micro transit. So micro transit services are much like Uber or Lyft. It's just the public transportation version of that. So the differences would be that when you use your mobile application to schedule your trip, you would be expected to perhaps walk about a half a block if there are safe facilities nearby, and you would always be paired with other riders. So in Uber or Lyft, you get to pick the size of your vehicle, you get to pick your pickup location, and you get to say if you want to ride together or alone. The public transportation version of that is more affordable, and therefore some of those requests for specific types of service are not part of that program, but it is very much like Uber and Lyft. It has that algorithm, it's mobile application based, and it's more flexible in that way. So if you have an area in your community that does not have sidewalks, there's no safe way for them to walk to a bus stop, there's not enough people on a regular enough schedule to make a single vehicle stop and pick them up, then more flexible models of service like an Uber or Lyft model is more appropriate. So there will be areas in the recommendations where you'll see diverse types of transit services recommended. It's the modern version of transit provision where you have a slate of services that are all working together to move people instead of one mode of transportation trying to move everybody. So key findings recap. This is an overview that is represented in your fact sheets, but for the benefit of those online and in the audience, we used a lot of different outreach tools in phase one to make sure that we could reach the community where they were. So had a really great page on the Low Country website where all of our information and resources were gathered. We really relied heavily on fact sheets that are attractive and interesting, that don't have a lot of alphabet soup words and that, but are distilled down to what someone would want to read quickly to get the information they're looking for. We also prioritized in-person events to come out to the community and make sure that while they were doing the things that they enjoyed, we had the opportunity to speak with them. Our surveys were really important to the study so that we could get the information apples to apples from folks that wanted to tell us where they wanted to go and needed to go. So we really prioritized our online and print surveys, including providing them to the existing transit riders in the region. So what we heard back from the public and our stakeholders is that safety and connectivity are top concerns. A lot of folks that we were communicating with have never ridden transit before. So this idea of a lack of safety or bringing folks that perhaps are not a part of their community into their community. So there'll be a lot of education required once service begins. Service for local workforce and tourists is top of mind. We have folks that are in this growing community that the distance between their income and costs is getting greater and greater. So making sure folks have the opportunity to get into the workforce and that we balance that with moving tourists because we know traffic congestion is getting more and more of a concern for the community. And then serving underserved areas. So those most vulnerable that likely don't have access to a vehicle. But I will give you a cut to many of those folks are living in the most rural parts of the community that are most difficult to get to. So that really is the conundrum of public transportation, is that in many cases, those that are most vulnerable are not in the areas that are prime for fixed route transit. Always a difficult.
Before you go any further,
Yes, sir.
help me understand underserved areas, and you got Paris Island and St. Helena. What's the
Those were specific areas that were identified in the surveys. So that was not identified by our team, but one worth recognizing as the most repeated 2 locations that the public thought were important to include.
okay?
So the outer parts of the county, rural parts of the county is not included in this survey?
They are, yes, sir. These were just 2 specific locations that were identified by the public. Yeah. So goals and objectives that were developed as part of a technical staff exercise as well as by your stakeholders enhance the quality of life and the environment. So we have to be good stewards of our environmental resources in addition to our financial resources, accessibility for all, economic growth and development, be safe and secure, and then efficient and financially sound. So we see some common themes that are coming up. We want to be efficient, we want to be good stewards, but we need to make sure we're supporting our community. And then the existing conditions, I know those are cut off, but again, it is on your fact sheet. It's a really great synopsis. Your population is continuing to grow rapidly in some areas of the community. So making sure that we're looking not just at what we need now, but to the future. Major destinations are concentrated in your community centers. And so when you think fixed route and you think bus stop, think those deepest concentrations. That's the minimum thresholds we would need to provide at least hourly service. And then propensity. Transit propensity is a combination of factors statistically most likely for an individual to need and use transit. And I know that's a mouthful, but there are factors that are quite obvious. Someone who doesn't have a vehicle, who's below a certain financial threshold, and who perhaps has a medical condition that does not allow them to drive. Those things are all captured by the U.S. Census Bureau and allow us to use combinations of them to find the best opportunities for public transportation service so that it would be utilized. There are other transit propensity factors statistically that make people more likely to use it, like females are more likely to use public transportation than males by 52%. So some of those are not as direct factors as zero vehicle households. But all of those are combined at various levels of importance to identify concentrations of the right type of folks that are going to likely use transit statistically. And then employment inflow and outflow. Oh, yes, ma'am. Sure.
I hate to go back, but Paris Island, the recruits can't leave, so I'm not sure how that showed up. I just, I'm kind of like, I don't get it.
That's the importance of your technical team, that we see these and we use them as a mile marker to look at, but we agree with you. We've
I think that the source of that, it was multiple surveys that mentioned graduation event.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
To get
I mean,
the
the
families
transit
to, I was
Yeah.
confused too. Back up. Okay, all right. Now I
That
understand.
makes-
That makes more sense. Okay.
Okay, so needs and strategies. We won't spend a lot of time on these, but they are important to moving us through the process. There are a lot of different tools in our toolbox, and we need to make sure that we're right sizing the tools for the type of needs that we're seeing. It is likened to bringing a sledgehammer to surgery. You wouldn't want the wrong tool or you're inevitably going to have poor outcomes. So making sure that we're right sizing the recommendations of this study to not only the needs, but also the available resources for the community. So in the transit strategies category, you would have your fixed route provided on the major roadways that would be your collectors. It's going to be like the funnel that's bringing people into the community. Then your fixed route circulator. So once you get into the densest part of your community where you have the largest number of origins and destinations, you want to move those folks more rapidly. So that's called a circulator. It's going to be in a concentrated area. It's not going to go out and collect as many people. It's there to move people. Microtransit, we've discussed, very important in those areas where we don't have the same density or community built out resources. And then employment center shuttles. The commuter shuttles are going to continue. Those are not jeopardized by the service. So our intent is to feed more riders to your commuter shuttles, because if they can't reach those currently, they can't utilize them. And then supporting strategies, we're going to have these micro mobility areas, because if you're on a major corridor, you still have to get to that closest pickup location. So things like bike share, bike and ped intensive corridor improvement. So if we see there's an opportunity or a need where we don't currently have infrastructure, making sure that you as a community know that, and that we need to invest in that in specific areas where we see a great need to filter people into the system and service, including your penny tax program. So making sure that we recognize those important projects and how they'll support this system. A van pool program, which is a really great scalable solution. If you've got folks that are in outlying areas, there's no better way to serve them, and they don't need to compete on a mobile application to have a reliable mode of transportation to work. Van pool programs are a great resource for a community so that they have access to that vehicle. They can go in greater areas into the region where that service is maybe not provided in the northern Beaufort County area. So it's a really dynamic tool, and one that if you have no riders, you pay nothing. If you grow it, you add vehicles as that growth model is intensifying. And then I love this one, the future ferry connections. We know that's long term, but making sure we're reflecting on that. And if there is to be a ferry entrance into the community where the transit vehicles could potentially connect in the future. And then your infrastructure that supports it all. We call them mobility hubs or facilities. We all know that you're going to have a place to sell tickets for folks to dwell. One of the highest impacts to your health of a transit system is the driver's health, because they're in vehicles all day long. They don't have great access to rest areas. So making sure we're cognizant of that if we're designing new from scratch, that we'll have those appropriate opportunities throughout the route design for them to exit the vehicle safely and to utilize those resources to maintain the health of a new workforce in your community. So that's both at the local level and at the regional level. If we talk about leaving this specific study area, where is the drop-off of pickup points and how does that all work as a level 1 hub, most important? And then moving in all the way to level 3, which is really your bus stop. And then park and ride facilities, which we've really taken a close look at to make sure that as folks are coming into the community, out of the community, and or just wanting to drop a vehicle off so that they don't have to try to find parking in the downtown, that they have an easy and accessible way to do that. Yes, sir.
Would you explain the community commuter shuttle process, how that actually works again?
So you have existing commuter shuttles that are operating within Northern Beaufort that have a pretty substantial ridership base. So those would remain unchanged. The goal for this system would be to make sure that we're recognizing and reflecting on their schedule and their pickup locations and coordinating with those. So if you have a new service type, making sure that those pickup and drop off locations have a common stop area so that if someone is trying to get to those commuter pickup locations, they can do so. And then potentially further enhancing them through the park and ride function so that those commuter shuttles can stop and pick up in those park and ride locations as well.
Okay.
Quickly, we have park and ride facilities.
Yes.
Was Honey Island State Park included in that?
It hasn't been yet, so we have zones, if you will. So once we have our preferred alternative, then we'll get very specific about what land is available. So we're still in the measures of effectiveness to make sure that we're routing in the right way and picking up the right number of folks. But I would love your input if you've got specific park and ride locations that we would have access to. We always look for available and public land or great partnerships that are statistically most likely to partner. For example, Walmarts are really great transit supportive business models where they say, we really love transit. We know that our employees and our patrons like to come here. So statistically, they're most likely to be a great park and ride partner. But there are other retailers that are known notoriously not to prefer transit. So making sure that we're prioritizing our routing for those that we know statistically are most likely to want it there. And so some of them will be public-private partnership and some of them will be specific transit park and ride facilities in the future. So if you have ideas, I'm absolutely open to hear them.
No, I just want you to, in mind because the Honey Island State Park has lost a lot of parking space.
Okay.
So the future of the park, I think park and ride may be the answer for access to it.
It's the destination and the largest tourism in northern Beaufort County. So I mean, so it would be a destination, not a park and ride. You'd park somewhere else and then
I understand. Okay, so we wouldn't want to be parking there. Understood. Okay, got it.
I believe
I have a question. Ms. Hampshire, forgive me, I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand and be polite. Here. We at City Council, as talked, it's come up in our conversations a number of times, about kind of a hop on, hop off type situation where the major transit intersections or, businesses like maybe Ladies Island, maybe somewhere in the city of Beaufort, maybe the intersection of Roberts Falls and Paris Island Gateway, where you could just have shuttles, if you will, just circulating. And the benefit of that is that you don't have to worry about its frequency, because if you miss one, another one's going to be by in whatever 15 minutes, so it's not going to affect your schedule very much. But yeah, I could see something like that taking some of the traffic off of our main thoroughfares, especially during the rush hours. Is that part of your thinking also?
It's a wonderful idea. And so what we do is we identify areas of need, and then we model those to see what the likely cost would be. And there will absolutely be cost constraints. So what you're describing is a very rapid frequency for the population and employment densities that you have in this community. That doesn't mean that that's not something that you still continue to explore, but what we do is identify where those areas of need and opportunity are, and we route them to connect them, and we run different models to say, okay, if we wanted to go 15 minutes, how many vehicles would it take? And so what would that associated cost be? So the only way you make them faster is to add more vehicles, because they're operating in the same traffic that everyone else is. So if you start to get to 15-minute headways, you would likely be seeing between 4 and 6 vehicles on every route, which is quite a lot. Each vehicle that you add adds another employee, which is the largest carrying cost for transit systems, is salary and benefits for that employee. Vehicles are fairly easy to acquire, but that ongoing cost of maintaining staff as well as fueling and preventative maintenance. So what we try to do is be as effective as we possibly can, moving as quickly as we can with the lowest number of resources to be most cost beneficial. So you'll see some of what you're describing in our draft suggested scenarios. I believe we got it down to 30 minutes in those core downtown areas, including the Gateway corridor. And some of them are overlapping with other routes. So it would feel very similar to what you're describing, that someone might only wait 15 minutes because they're in a specific segment that has multiple routes that are overlapping. So I'll show you some schematic scenarios in a couple of slides, and then I'd love your reaction to what we've prepared so far.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. So we won't get into a lot of detail with these graphics, but these are examples of either existing plan maps that were very important to identifying transit needs, or some that we pulled representative data from and identified areas of opportunity need and areas of perhaps constraint. If we have very specific traffic issues on a corridor, we're going to recognize it as an important corridor, but also recognize it as an area that would be operationally challenging for a bus system. So using the available information, outflow and inflow of employment, planned improvements for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, population and employment density. You see our transit propensity map in the middle. That was all those characteristics most likely to rely on public transportation. So these all help us as a layering effect identify those areas of greatest need. This was also a really important exercise that was completed by our sub-consultant team, Jennifer Bragg and Associates, so local engineering firm that's very familiar with the penny tax program and local roadway improvements, as well as the most reliable to place points of importance to the community. So we had their team work with our team to identify every pharmacy, every doctor's office, every grocery store and school institution, every church, every place that the community would likely want to be able to access at various levels of scale. We also identified the existing as well as planned multifamily residential and more densely populated single-family residential areas, with an emphasis on those below a specific income level. And then, of course, those military resources in your community that help drive a lot of those travel sheds. So each point is color-coded based on what that type of location is. And this helps us to play the really sophisticated transit version of Connect the Dots. When we see concentrations of those dots, it helps us to understand what those trips are likely to be like and what that profile of that trip is likely to draw. So if it's a grocery store, it will have a very different number of hours in the day that it would require destination-based service in comparison to perhaps a doctor's office that's going to have business hours. So we map those key origins and destinations and then use those as a very important lay of the land check on those areas of opportunity. Yes, sir.
I can't see the key.
Yeah.
What are those locations in the water? On the edge, it looks like there's some in the.
Strip outlets probably.
Yeah.
That's the ferry to the sandbars.
Yeah. That's a good question. I'll have to look back at it.
Looks like there's a blue one up there.
Yeah.
River.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on
Wonder
that
if that's the
one. Yes,
So what are your red and yellow dots?
I'm gonna rely on this legend as much as y'all.
Put your cursor on the minimum
Yep.
up
Oh,
there,
yeah.
you might be able to drop that down without closing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, red is emergency and medical. Yeah, so our blue is parks and recreation, so that might actually be the sandbar where folks are trying to go.
That's Hunting Island and Harbor Island and Burp Island, so they're probably calling the beaches, which are in the water at high tide. So this thing is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So we did come up with schematic scenarios as a result of our data-driven and public and stakeholder involvement-driven processes. We prepared 3 scenarios and presented them to your stakeholders committee as well as your technical team, and then gathered them to review those schematic scenarios, discuss them, and then work together in 2 separate teams to design their preferred transit system using some of the suggestions that we provided and some others that they felt were very important to the community. So it was a really fantastic workshop. We had a lot of different ideas about how to deliver service, but we had strong consensus in almost every area of where service should be provided and the frequency that would be the target for those areas. So the schematic routing is what you see in the right-hand corner, where you can see we have the circulator model happening in the downtown Beaufort, Port Royal area. And then you have feeder routes that are coming in from other areas in the community that have those lower population densities, but still very critical connections. And then we also, as a group, worked on priority setting. So we had that long list of all the different potential solutions, and we had the stakeholders committee place dots on the solutions that they most favored for the community. So for example, there was van pool in comparison to bicycle and pedestrian upgrade. If you run out of money before you can implement one of those in year 1, which one should we do first? So that was a really great exercise as well. We got a little fallen T there, but so we've got some hot off the press draft information. We met as a technical committee yesterday to review that. This is currently under further assessment, but this is the next step, moving from schematic scenarios into testable scenarios. So for the urban service scenarios, we have 4 total. The total number of vehicles maxes out at 5. So that's quite a few vehicles for a fixed route solution. And then our peak headways. So if it says 60 minutes, that's hourly service. 30 minutes would be 30-minute service. And when we say peak, we mean at the highest point of maximum vehicles operating at that prime time in the day. So you may have off-hour numbers of vehicles, but we always want to know what that peak headway is. And then we have suburban service scenarios. So we like to do these separately so that we can combine them in different ways. So find the preferred in-town solutions and then the suburban solutions and pair them together to find the most efficient pairing. So we have microtransit, fixed route, and then the 24-hour advanced reservation for areas that are just so low in population, it doesn't make sense to even have a microtransit model there because the number of folks that would most likely need it are going to be so low that you couldn't use that more expensive model. So the suburban service is that, again, door-to-door geographic coverage, equitable access, trying to get as much service geographically out there as possible. And then in that urban area, we're looking at frequency, connectivity, how quickly can we move people around, how direct are those connections so that people aren't riding for an hour to get from one point to the other. So here's a quick sneak peek of what those scenarios look like for the in-town service. They look very similar, but they are very different in functionality and direction of flow. So for example, when you're comparing these, you can see the far left, scenario 1, has 2 routes. We like to call that the Mike Tommy loop on the right, because there's a lot of great work done early on that identified that as a potential corridor connection. And then the supporting larger loop that would then be the feeder, collecting folks to drop them into that faster circulator in the downtown. So the number of trips is just over 25,000 with 16,200 total population within 3/4 of a mile of that alignment. 5 peak vehicles that would go between 30 and 60 minutes. And that's roughly $1.49 million per year for the total of 5 vehicles. So when we start talking about higher frequency, we would add more vehicles and that number would go up. So we start at what we think we can defend as far as population and employment. And when our goals change and we say, no, not just density based, we want to compete with vehicles in a more meaningful way, then those metrics change and that number can go up or down. So when you compare scenario 1 to say scenario 4 is going to have more trips in the day. So 35,600. Population served goes up to 16,600. Our vehicles go down to 4. And so we're on the same peak frequency, 30 to 60 minutes, and our operating cost goes down to 1.41. So when we talk about measures of effectiveness, just in the way that we tweak routes can have a major impact to the cost and the benefit of potential service scenarios. So this is the testing model that we're in now. When we, at the desktop review level, all have consensus that we like one scenario over another or narrow it down to a couple of potential scenarios, we ground truth them. We get on a bus and we drive around the community to see if what we are modeling is real. And in our suburban services, we have microtransit zones. So you wouldn't see stops on the map. You would see these areas of potential service. So if you were going to be a user, you would determine if you are in or out of that area, and then you would schedule your trip. Those make key connections to the fixed route system, so you can always get from one to the other. And you would have 2 zones, 14,400 trips roughly. So that's 25,300 populations served. 4 vehicles, 60-minute frequency. So you can make that go up or down. It just costs more the faster you go. So you can say, we want our folks to wait 15 minutes. They're going to deploy a larger fleet. So you get to control the cost by the number of vehicles. So that operating cost would be 1.35 million per year, roughly, again, planning numbers. And when you compare that to the alternative, which is the fixed route solution, you can see that the cost is dramatically lower. It's under $1 million. But then when you see the total population that would have access to it using the same number of vehicles, it's less than half. So if we're talking about the greatest population coverage, when you have a microtransit solution that's going to go somewhat door to door, you're always going to have better coverage. So again, those goals and objectives and return on that bottom line dollar investment. 24-hour advanced reservation is not for these specific areas. This is actually on the other side of the bridge north. So Yemassee and surrounding areas. We know that that's important. It's part of our study area, but the population drops off dramatically. So when we look at the potential population served, it's only just over 2,000 for that entire area within our study area. So a good rule of thumb in transit is you hope that you can obtain about 10% of the population in ridership. So if you look at that population, you would be expecting roughly 200 or fewer riders. That's a fairly low margin, and we expect that it would be lower than that, given the likely cost to deliver it. So an important option so that we can show the public that we did evaluate it, and if the goals and objectives of the community drive us to find solutions countywide, this would be the recommended type of service delivery we would recommend for lower population areas. Any questions on these before we move on? I know it's a lot. Okay. So next steps in discussion, we're going to continue our public engagement efforts. We're planning our final presentation to the public as we speak. We'll be finalizing those draft service recommendations, of course, with input from stakeholders in the community, and then presenting that final plan for adoption in October. So I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have and scoot through any slides y'all might have more questions about. Yes, ma'am.
For the next reach out to the public, what, do you have any idea when?
We've already started. We actually presented to Green Drinks a couple of weeks ago, which was really well attended and fantastic. And I really personally enjoyed it. A lot of those meetings can be poorly attended, but anytime it's at a brewery and outside, folks are really excited to pass the mic around and have really great conversation. They stayed after and they were given the opportunity to help us prioritize those investments and put additional pins on the map. So it was a lot of interactivity and engagement. And we actually ended up with a couple of folks signing up to continue to receive additional information as we go through the process. We were excited for them to become part of our emissary team. So there'll be ongoing activities. We did develop a really fantastic community emissary program in our phase 1, where folks that came out and spoke with us either at a stakeholders meeting or at public involvement opportunities, they signed up to be part of an emissary team. So we give them resources and communication tools for them to publish on their Facebook page or to hand out at their community events. So we have about 25 emissaries that are all ready to go with round 2. So the fact sheet will certainly be part of that. But we'll really activate them when we have our draft service recommendations so that they can get that information out to the public and get great feedback. So we'll be finalizing our drafts preferred alternative in the next 4 weeks. So that big push will be in the August timeframe so that we know we'll have the available information for folks to really react to about what that draft service might look like. Yes.
I just want to thank you because you have taken a very thorough approach to this study as far as I can tell. And so very appreciative on behalf of the city for that. I also want to say I participated in the most recent stakeholder, and I got to tell you guys, this is not an easy task.
Yeah.
One of the things we had to do was that they gave us strings and dots and pins, and we only had so much string we could use, which represented the resources you had to be able to do things, and you had to figure out where the routes were and
Red?
yes, yes. And so so I gained an appreciation for what you're doing. So I want to say thank you. And I look forward to, and I think we all look forward to the product when it comes out.
Thank you so much.
The question, I appreciate all the work you're doing too, but as far as tapping into that federal funding and the timeline of implementation and in conjunction with our budget, because the federal budget and our budget are not synced up.
Right.
So how does that, do you have any recommendation on how that works as far as we implement in October? How do we tap into that federal funding and incorporate it into our budget moving forward?
So Brian and his team are already doing a great job of that. You're already leveraging
Topic, the
it.
Beaufort. Yeah, we struggle with that big time because we have 9 partners. So we have 9 partners all doing their budget at the same time we are. So we actually had to pass, our board had to pass this week a continuing resolution because we were waiting on local match numbers and we're still waiting on local numbers. So we're basically operating under our fiscal 25 budget for at least a month. So here's how that kind of works. I'll try to keep it simple. We will know, for example, in the next month or 2, what our appropriations are from the FTA for their next fiscal year starting October 1st. It's a guessing game a little bit. But more practically speaking, what we've done here is we made the decision going into fiscal. So there was very little funding per se in fiscal 25. There was some capital monies for this urban area from the Federal Transit Administration for this current fiscal year that's ending. we, under the old executive director, we purchased two, basically ADA vehicles because we knew we were gonna need them. So we used that money to buy two vehicles, minor. And we just leveraged local match that we already had on hand. We didn't even come out to the three, partners up here for that because it would have muddied the waters. Going into fiscal 26, we officially added the new urban area as a new funding area. So we have new bank accounts, we knew everything for it. So this year we added two partners because we already had the county, and we added the city of Beaufort, town of Port Royal. So the budget requests there were capital requests only. And to Rachel's point, capital is easy, money is easier to find for capital items. Buying them not necessarily is easy because you have to get into the production cycle. So we wanted to get ahead of the curve because we knew we were going to be doing something here. We just don't know exactly what. So we asked for capital match money, which the three partners have approved. So that is secured. That's one known we have actually is for this northern Beaufort area. Fiscal 27 is going to be the first year where we ask for match for operating. Operating dollars are only 50-50. Capital's 20-80. So the number is going to go way up. And again, that'll be an ask. And obviously we'll have conversations leading up to that. But we'll be talking with officials at the three, the county, the city, and the town well in advance of that to say this is what the recommendation was. This is what the costs are. This is what the match is. And then we'll decide whether it's feasible. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Makes sense. And just follow up to that. Has your study taken into account, and I'm sure y'all are working on it as well, the pricing for the service and the expanded access and what is that going to do? with
Pricing
the
meaning fares or?
Yeah, fares, as far as for the access to the service and everything, because that's going to obviously offset as we expand access, that's going to offset some of the operational costs to have that. Oh, no, obviously we got to put in
It
for it
does.
too.
Fares remarkably don't account for that much.
Okay.
And we do have a fare structure in place, board approved. So all five of our counties have representatives on the board. Basically, we have an urban fixed route fare of $1 per trip. So if you got on, it's $1. You get off, you get back on, it's $1. So there's no such thing as a transfer per se. So if we did an urban circulator right now under our current fare structure, that would be $1 per trip. It would probably start off free because you want people to ride it.
Do y'all have like a yearly pass or anything like that?
We do weekly and monthly. We don't do yearly. We do it monthly and weekly. It's kind of based on our commuter pattern, but we're always open to changes, a yearly pass or what have you. It depends on the community, and we can do different things in different zones too, different areas.
And I don't want to get off topic, but one of the first things I heard was actually from some of the elderly in the community that wanted a yearly fixed rate pass so they could go ahead and buy and have that. So that was one of the first things that I heard. Yeah.
Our commuters tend to ride 5 or 6 days a week. So we do our weekly passes. It's odd that they're 12 trips because it assumes 6 days and then they can use it for the next week if they want to. It's kind of weird, but it kind of works for that. But again, it's commuter based. So we are a very new fixed route operator. I mean, the trolley in Hilton Head was our first real fixed route. We did Walterboro Works before that up in Walterboro. That's pretty small. So that's only in its 8th season. And the fares are free because it's free to ride. Technically, there's still $1 fare, but the town of Hilton Head covers that fare in their match, in our match requests.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, I've heard other council members praise the Hilton Head trolley. And then I've heard others that say the one in
Bluffton
doesn't work.
Bluffton struggles.
I struggle.
Yeah.
So, but it looks like y'all have done a lot of homework. I call it trolley. I mean,
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
I mean, that's
We know what you
probably
mean.
what you're talking about,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it looks like you've done a lot of the hard
I'll be
work,
honest.
but this might work north of the Broad, especially during the
Yeah.
tourist peak seasons, like we were talking about Hunting Island.
The
And
plan,
thank you for thanks for all the hard work.
the plan that developed or resulted in the Bluffton Breeze service, I pulled it out 3 or 4 months ago and compared it to what Rachel and their team are doing. This is miles ahead of that plan. That plan, it ended during COVID. So the public outreach was online only. No one attended the public meeting. The routing, we had to fix the routing within a year it didn't include Old Town, for example, if you're familiar with Bluffton. So we fixed that. We We added our biggest trip generator, which is the Hilton Head RV Resort, believe it or not. There are some very loyal riders on that service that ride it frequently, but a lot of people just don't know how to use it. They want to use their car. And so it's on us to educate them on that. I'm determined not to eliminate that service, because I think it's a necessary service in an area where you're gonna run out of lanes to build. I mean, you're gonna have to do something. So we've met with the town of Beaufort, because they're obviously a local partner there. And they're still willing to help fund it. So we're willing to keep trying. So we're doing everything we can. Yeah, the trolley service in Hilton Head's wildly successful. And I think for different reasons, a circulator, the Tomy Express, is gonna work. You just know it's gonna work. It's an intuition. I know that's not the plan, but it's gonna work.
Yes, sir.
Have you done any work with the school district and look at our bus routes? And look at the traffic that we generate by parents coming to pick up their children? I've got a map that shows where every student lives that attends at each school. And I looked at your fixed routes and I said, my gosh, there's an awful lot. They can just walk.
I was thinking the same
fixed
thing.
route.
That's one of my questions about the mission was.
So, you know, we spend a lot of money on that. And we get, if you see some of our schools, the parents choose to bring their kids to and pick them up from school, and they block a lot of streets.
I went 170.
If we had a fixed route going through there that had alternatives, I think it would be very attractive. And I also think that there could be some fund sharing of this. So have you considered that, or is that any place else in the state of South Carolina? Go for it.
I would love to take this one because we've actually been helping a municipality disassociate from the school board. It was considered a Federal Transit Administration finding that those resources have to be kept explicitly separate. This particular Georgia Transit Agency was operating the school bus service and they were exchanging resources for that service. It was still open to the public, but they were running the school bus routes. So their system went from 1.2 million trips a year to roughly 20,000 trips a year after the Federal Transit Administration gave them a cease and desist. That was about 3 years ago. And it's in the news. I don't mind sharing. That was Rome, Georgia. But they did exactly what you are describing and it made sense. And they called them trippers. And it was the most successful model for a small urban community in Georgia. The Federal Transit Administration said that that was not allowable, that it was offsetting local costs for a school board, which is not meeting the mission of the Federal Transit Administration. So we have been supporting and helping them to fix that problem and reimagine their transit services. And so that was one of those legislative instances where now all transit planners in the country were watching. And when that decision was made, we all know to recommend that we don't too closely affiliate with schools. They're important partners, but when financial lines begin to blur, that's where the Federal Transit Administration.
I understand, and I can see where that would happen for our buses.
Yes,
I'm also concerned about these parents that are not using the buses.
absolutely.
That would not be in conflict with this funding model.
So we work hard to make it as attractive as possible as an alternative. And you saw on our kind of alternative supporting infrastructure list, things like bike share, that's where we really see some opportunity. Because if we had a bike share hub next to the school where folks could either use that instead of the bus or in combination with a bus with a bike rack on the front, and then they can utilize that in whatever frequency they need to. Now we've expanded our opportunity and access and attractiveness. So absolutely, we have made sure that our routes hit these schools intentionally. We know they're important not just for parents dropping off students, but also parent-teacher conferences and events. So it's top of mind for us and making sure that we understand where that line is of attractiveness and resource versus financial resource. So yes, sir, absolutely.
Just to add to that, there's 2 charter schools. One of them absolutely blocks Highway 170.
Yes, ma'am.
And Shell Point, in my neighborhood, the Low Country Montessori School, that both of those schools have caused so many traffic problems with parents who, yeah.
I'm a parent of 2, and because I'm a transportation planner, I walk mine to school and aggressively do carpooling. But I am few and far between in my group that does that. It is a problem, and it's not just a problem for congestion and traffic. One of the number one reasons children are not present in school is asthma. And that's aggravated by them sitting in lines with emissions coming from vehicles, and they're inhaling that before they get into school. And it's a real problem. It's a problem for their health and for the community. So I will do everything in my design power to make it attractive. And then we'll leave it with Ryan and his team to market the heck out of it and work with those school boards to make sure that during implementation, they understand the value.
Thank you, Greg.
Only comment I want to make, Mr. Chairman, is I want to thank you for including rural areas. That was a concern of mine several years ago when I saw the initial design of the routing and how do you connect the rural area to the transit system? So I wanted to thank you for that.
Right. I want to make sure that if you all are speaking to the community, make sure that they're recognizing flexibility, adaptive models, and that one size doesn't fit all. So when we think public transportation, we think of all of our tools working together to help them have choices, for that freedom for them to make those choices.
Do I have any public comments?
Since we reduced Mitch, let's make sure that he.
Thanks, Mike. No, not at this point. I just want to thank Ms. Hatcher for her presentation also. Thank you, man.
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, y'all know how to get in touch with me. There's contact information on the fact sheets. Y'all always know how to find Stephanie and Brian. And thank you again for the opportunity to work with you all.
Before you leave, this board, I think, is an inroad to all the different areas. I know you're going to want to go to the city and the town and the county with presentations in the future as well. What I would really appreciate, if you could, is when you get to that next step where you can blow the transportation up the way you finalize what the routes are going to be and how they're going to work. I would very much like to see you come back to this board and present that in comments. I think once we can see the actual routing in a larger scale, it's going to generate a lot more interest and information for us to be able to respond to. If we can get to that point, or when you get to that point, can we schedule another meeting with you to do another presentation that gives us that additional information?
We'll absolutely work with you all, whether that's virtual or in person. We'll have to work with our schedule for the little bit of time we have left in the study, but absolutely. We recognize it's important, and we'll send resources as they're developed as well.
I wanted to add, you read my mind, because like when I talked about meeting with the 3 partners up here, this would be the first place to do it. And by the time that meeting would happen, because we're all thinking dollars and cents, we'll have a much better picture of what it's going to cost. Maybe drill down a lot on what you saw already in the sneak peek today. And we'll already, let me back up. My budget cycle used to start in December, January. It's constant. I'm not waiting. I'm starting right now for fiscal 27 because we got this going on, which I'm so excited about because I can't wait to implement some of this stuff. But we've got the issues we already have. And so we have to be nonstop around the clock. It's not a season anymore. It's the whole year. So we'll have a much better feeling for where we're headed with our budget as well. So the big picture impact and then the small picture, smaller picture, what this specific service will look like. So we'll have a better idea what we can feasibly implement.
Well, and if you can give us that schedule early enough, we can then invite our counterparts to the boards to that meeting, which I think will help a lot by the time you get to the individual presentations at the boards in official settings to make things happen, fast track some things, if you will. I think that would be great. The other thing I'd like to ask is, would you put all of the members of our board, and we'll get you all that information, on your list, so that they see have access to all of the activities that you're planning in the future for that.
Absolutely.
I think some are already on there. if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
yeah.
Maybe not everybody.
I know there's a few of us on there, but
Yeah.
yeah, and then each of us could add names to that might be important to that. I want to thank you because I've been trying to do this for now 4 years. And it's exciting to me because I think it's a real positive thing for this community. I think this community has been lacking in that public transportation element that is going to help everybody, lower income people, the businesses in the community, our tourists, the traffic, everything. It'll have a tremendous impact on all of those things. So I thank you for all of the work that you've done, the work effort that you've done on this.
Thank you so much. And if y'all don't know how involved Tommy is in the community, I know he sits on a lot of boards, but he and I play phone tag on our cell phones regularly. Any opportunity to offer to help more, he has been invaluable to this process. So I commend you on your efforts as well.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm a continuing resource to this board, this committee, but every one of your individual entities too. Because of our growth, this whole area, plus the need for public transit, funding is just so critical. So having those conversations at the earliest possible. So I invite you to invite us, whatever that means, whether that's me and Stephanie or whether it's me and my team. We're gonna make it happen. And this northern Beaufort area, to your point, it's begging for transit. I knew that the minute I moved down here from Ohio, it's begging for it. So I can't wait because it's not going to be like the Bluffton concern we have. We're going to have people riding. We are preparing, the financial models will include the mandatory complimentary ADA paratransit service. So when you're talking to the public, if they can apply for and get certified to use ADA service within 3/4 of a mile of any fixed route that we do, that's going to be a major service for these people. We're already transporting a lot of those people. This will be even better. And I think less expensive too.
From the northern standpoint, you have the representation of all the partners, obviously on this group as well. So if you would provide this model so that it can be distributed to our councils as well, so that we can provide this to them to watch the 2 others that haven't been here from our council before, from your council that haven't been here, the 5 from your council that haven't been there, 11 from your council. You can share it with all of them through Stephanie, and that would be a great start for the preliminary information, because we need to have everybody on board as knowledgeable as possible.
Yeah, it's regional. It's the northern region, but it's very regional. And remember, we're a 5-county authority. So when we're looking at things, the commuter routes she was talking about, and I'll be honest, I don't know exactly where they all stop because they're so spread out. But so we try to, and that's where we're trying to make sure that we integrate as best we can with all those commuter routes to make it as efficient, overall efficient as well.
From the light standpoint, we recognize the importance of the transportation because of the overview of our multi-county relationship as well. So it's very important for all the stakeholders to be knowledgeable as possible when we're doing this kind of preliminary study. So thank you so much for a lot of great information.
But the last element I wanted to add was the park and ride element. Got the bus stops and everything, but participation from each of the municipalities in helping to provide areas for park and ride that make sense for people is going to be critical to the success of this thing. So I would like all the municipalities to start thinking about areas that are good for park and ride areas, like the Piggly Wiggly area is a real catchment area, just as an example. But start thinking about those public-private partnerships and working with the businesses in those locations, because the quicker we can set those in place, the better off we're going to be as well. Again, thank you so much.
Mike, this comment, as we was going through the presentation, my mind ran on the infrastructure penny sale tax coming up, and one of the comments made to the council was that there was not enough specificity in the plan for the last. So maybe as much specificity you can give us to help us, because that's a section of the referendum. I think it's gonna be helpful.
Like the hub for the facility. Might be something, that if we had a dollar amount, we might not know where it would be, but we could put it in the referendum.
Yeah, the capital project.
As a capital project. Okay. It sounds like it's necessary to make it happen, the hub.
I think so.
And you can get some buy-in to it.
Yeah, and the timing would be good from the October deadline here, because then we have more time to make our presentation.
And we recognize every community is different, and because I live in Savannah and I come over and spend time with my mother here in the community, we recognize that a line on the map is not sufficient, and I would never diss any of my competitors for the previous plan in Bluffton, but we have a local engineering sub-consultant, and they have a copy of all the routes. They manage your penny tax program, and we've tasked and challenged them to come up with infrastructure supportive projects and costing them and providing you with schematics, so that as we move into implementation of this plan, you're not left with a wide swath on a map, but rather implementable projects, not just the transit, but all of the infrastructure that makes it successful. So it was important to us to give you more than just a plan, but rather a roadmap with actual tools you can use. So yes, sir, that will be part of this delivery.
No, I'm glad you included the ferry in your proposal, because that's a conversation. I don't know what it goes.
I saw all of the council like
I smile when I say it because I know that there are differing opinions, but we would be remiss if we didn't at least reflect on how we connect. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Great.
Okay, we'll move on to any other discussion items that the board would like to put on the table.
I know for me, we talked about this, talked about it before. I think the timing might be right for us to start working at the fire department.
The county has set aside some funds to initiate a study. Thanks for that.
Hopefully we can keep the cost down and just update the study that was already done. So,
It's pretty old. I don't even remember when that was.
Mike, another topic. I understand the county is pursuing some substantial changes to the animal control ordinance. And that's important because about 7 years ago, the municipalities all adopted the same ordinance as the county in exchange for the county providing those animal control services within the municipalities as well. And so it would be great if we could get a look at what those changes are so we can compare ourselves.
But I'm sure.
Well, John, they were, but there's a process that was followed last time, and it seems the process is different this time. And so I just want to know what the process is.
I can share it with you. It's in the final stage in the back of the material. There's one amendment that's coming forward, and it's just an appeal process.
But have any of the municipalities adopted it?
No, we haven't even adopted it yet. So it's still.
So that coordination still needs to.
Okay.
We need to know what that looks like so we can best support your efforts and make it as smooth as
It would be
possible.
better for us to do a cooperative adoption.
Yeah.
As we go
Yeah,
forward.
I got you.
I'm just trying to help you.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely.
On that point, there's a number of other items that I think would be really great to coordinate with all of us, with the county, with the city and the town, that because we're all developing our code standards at this point. I know we are deep into that. And so we've gotten into a number of areas that I think cross all of our lines, and there may want to be some consistency in how we do that. And there's things I know setbacks from wetlands is one, docks is another one. There's a lot of those kinds of items that maybe, maybe we could put together a list of all of those items of coordination of our codes that it would be good to put on the table and have the discussion, and then be able to take that back to the elements that are developing those codes to put those into place. I think, Elizabeth, maybe we could put together a list of those that we would like to at least put on the table for discussion for our next meeting, if we don't have something else that we have on here. And just kind of go through them line item by line item, because I know we've all been looking at them quite a bit individually. Let's put our heads together and see if there's consistency in our thought processes.
This will be more than an hour meeting.
Well, maybe we break it out into different areas.
Yeah.
I don't think we all have to agree, but we can agree to disagree too. But at least it'd be good to know what everybody's thought processes are and where we think, you know, things should be in that sense. And at the same time, I think we can put some information from a federal standpoint or a larger standpoint of what other entities are actually looking at and doing at the same time too. Any other discussion points?
Just call it.
That's kind of where I was at. Those are public comments that had come in related to some of those issues, but I'd like to get a laundry list of all the issues, and then we can address each one of them. And maybe just briefly, and we could set it up to have a deeper discussion later on, so we don't wind up with, you know, more than a 1 hour meeting. Any other discussion items? Nothing from public. With that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
A second.
Moved and seconded. We're adjourned. Thank you very much for your participation. I appreciate it.
Almost.